So San Diego Comic-Con 2022 is now over. We got to see a whole bunch of new Transformer product. There was a lot of excitement. We got to see pretty much our first big look, both in terms of product and of the animation of the new Transformer series, Transformers Earthspark. But now let's talk about follow-up stuff, because during those quieter Sundays at San Diego Comic-Con, there was no real big reveals, just pretty much product on the floor. And Hasbro staff, designers, and marketers just sitting at the booth, just, fielding questions from people and from different companies and just doing the basic business kind of work. And there was a whole bunch of questions that were asked to different designers and marketers. And we have a list of those questions today. And it's a lot of questions that, honestly, a lot of us Transformer fans want to know about the future of the product going into the second half of 2022 and, of course, going into 2023. What's happening with Legacy, what's happening with Studio Series, and we also have some follow-up questions with the Kotobukiya line too. So let's get into all of that. There's a lot of really cool stuff here that we could discuss, and it's pretty exciting stuff. So let's jump into it. So the first question that was asked was, could we see High Moon video game figures in Studio Series? Now, High Moon video game stuff, of course, is the War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron characters. Probably, and I've said this many times, the most beloved of all the Transformer video games. And their response was, unfortunately, anything is possible. A little bit of a canned answer. But I do agree, anything is possible. If there's one thing I've learned with the Transformer brand is nothing is out of limits. Just anything could be done. So who knows? And maybe we'll see something. Second question. Likewise, could we see Studio Series expand to include things like off-screen movie toy characters, TV show characters, or comic book characters? They responded again with the same thing. Anything is possible. I'm pretty sure with both of those answers, those are something that pretty much means something is down the pipeline. And they just don't want to talk about it. Just to let you guys know, that's probably the last time they'll say anything is possible. We get all legitimate answers afterwards. Just those two were pretty corporate canned answers, as I like to call them. Next one we have here is, are any generations off limits for Legacy? And what they mean by that is any kind of characters or designs or series or is anything off limits for Legacy? They responded, no, there is no limits of what could be done in Transformers Legacy. So that means we might even see movie toys. Who knows? Very weird, but yeah. And then they said, well, then still will we see Transformers animated then? And then we have a resounding yes. Evan said that he saw the rumors about animated not being able to be used, but those are rumors that are incorrect. Transformers has the rights to all their characters within Hasbro, animated included. So we will be seeing something animated in the future, and there is going to be follow-up questions here about animated in a moment. Next, they ask here, anything on the new Transformers PC or game console stuff, or even Activision re-releases? They say they can't comment on new game releases. They don't know anything about that. And that's an honest answer, because the individuals that were present, of Evan and Ben and even some of the other marketers that were there, that's not really their department. Hasbro has their Hasbro gaming department that they've really been trying to build up over the past 5 years with Wizards of the Coast and everything. So I don't think that's really in their wheel well. So for them to even give an answer, I think that they probably could give an answer, but it's nothing that they could be confident about because it's not their department. They don't want to say something that they only know half answer for. So that's understandable. But from my perspective, there is something going on. It's just they can't answer it because they just can't. Then we go into how has the sales for the Cybertron Metroplex Titan class been going so far? Pretty much the pre-order sales and stuff like that. They said Metroplex did well. We just don't have the exact numbers at the exact moment. So that's pretty good. Do they intend to continue with the Titan class price point? Yes, we plan to keep them going indefinitely. Well, that's good. That was another rumor that they were saying, like, oh, maybe Titans are going to be discontinued and we're going to have 2 commander classes instead a year. That was a rumor that we were hearing for a while. Well, that puts the end to that, doesn't it? Any chances of getting a new Tidal Wave figure? They respond, yes, we hear from the fans, and yes, we know and they know, they referring to Hasbro corporate which makes those final decisions. Then we have what led to more open fan interaction via Instagram accounts. That was Mark Mayer, who was pushing to have more Instagram interactivity with the fans and sharing the behind the scenes. So thank you, Mark, for that. Nice transparency. And I'm telling you, the stuff that we saw was mind-blowing. I mean, it's stuff that we would have never known about if not for those Instagram posts about like how we would have gotten a Cosmos out of that Bumblebee Origins mold. Instead, we learned, the inside baseball of it. So I love that kind of stuff. So much appreciated for that. Then they follow up with, are they happy about the experiences thus far with the fans? They said, yep, really happy with it. So that's pretty cool. No negativity out of that, because sometimes the fans could be a little coarse, to say the least, especially when you read the comments. Are they open to redos of Studio Series characters that have already been done? When they refer to redos, I'm assuming what they mean is re-releases of previous ones that have gone up in value. They said, personally would like to do redos, but not certain right now if it'll actually happen. And that's honestly another honest answer, because when you're talking about re-releases, you're talking about firing up a schedule at the factories in Vietnam and going like, hey, everything we're doing right now, everything that we have planned right now, stop all of that because we need to dedicate this machine and this group of people in the factory that are scheduled to do this to instead make sure this Ironhide individual release gets done. So they'd really have to schedule it. They really have to make a spot in a wave assortment and everything. And right now, I mean, they probably have a lead time of everything planned for the next year and a half, if not 2 years, because of Rise of the Beast. So it's probably something, yes, but again, will it actually happen anytime in the near future? Probably not. It's something that if they'd be planning it now, and it would be happening 2 years from now, which is a sad truth, but that's just how the biz is. Is Cyberverse a possibility for Legacy? Referring to our previous Transformer series of Transformer Cyberverse. And they said yes. So that's pretty cool too, because Cyberverse was just one of those lines that the show was pretty good, but it just didn't have a lot of great toys to represent those characters. The deluxe price point for that line came way too late in the line's history. I mean, it came out literally when the line was on its way out and the show was done. So it's something where it'd be cool because, I mean, and I've said this before on the live stream, how do you not, like, Windblade was like literally one of the main characters of the show, and she had not very good toys. Like, they gave her a warrior class and then a small price point, and that's literally it. And it's something where she would have been perfect for the deluxe class, and so would have others like Slipstream and some of the other female characters. I understand obviously demographics and gender and selling to the Chinese market and how that affects it too and everything. There was a lot of stuff that Cyberverse was kind of hampered by because there was a Chinese connection in terms of marketing. But at the end of the day, I think that the opportunity could present itself, and maybe we could get a decent Cyberverse Windblade, or just a Windblade in general in Legacy. That'd be fantastic. Do you plan to have any Cyber Planet keys in future Legacy stuff, aka the Force chips in Galaxy Force, or the Cyber Planet keys in Cybertron? They said, may release the keys as a possible weapons pack. That's exciting news. I really like that. I could see them taking the Cyber Planet key kind of sculpt and then putting a 3mm peg on where the connection could be, and then you could just plug it in onto different characters, like just almost like a piece of armor. And that's cool because we're getting a bunch of Cybertron characters now. I mean, Override and Metroplex, just to name a few. And to not have Cyber Planet keys would be a nice, it would be an extra nice aesthetic that could be added. And if that's a weapon pack that's happening, sign me up, because I loved Galaxy Force. That's in my top 5 Transformer series of all time. The Japanese dub, not the Western dub. Western dub is Garbo. But it's, sign me up. That's really cool. I would dig that. And then they said, well, what about minicons? And they said, once they move fully into Armada, minicons will indeed be something we will think about. That's a very interesting line. Once we fully move into Armada, that's implying that at some point there is going to be a shift to focus more on Armada characters. So that's almost like a slip of the tongue, if anything. Once we fully move into Armada, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but this is literally their own words, word for word, verbatim. So once we fully move into Armada, mini-cons are indeed something we will have to think about. So that is definitely on the table. Any additional allotments for the Velocitron Cosmos? This is referring to Cosmos selling out very quickly on both the Hasbro Pulse website and on Walmart's website. Their response is Walmart can run more if they want to, meaning they could run another order through Hasbro to have it produced. But for Hasbro Pulse, what we had was what we had. It's now sold out. And that is just how it functions. When they have a store exclusive, like a Walmart exclusive with the Velocitron line, Hasbro, I believe they said they get 15% of the stock they get for Hasbro Pulse, and that's it. So if Walmart wants to do another run of it, if they feel that the money is worth it there, then they will. But unfortunately, I don't think that's the case, because the question is for Cosmos, that's a 1 per case character. So if Walmart does, if all of this Velocitron stuff comes out and all of a sudden Burnout and Blur start shelf warming like crazy and there's just tons of them left over, do you think they're going to want to ask for another case assortment of all of those characters just to get those 1 per case Clampdown and Cosmoses again, just to end up with even more Burnouts and Blurs? So I think the only way that would be happening is if everything sells out, every peg is just absolutely empty, and then there's the incentive for them to order more. But unfortunately, and I've said this in the past, I feel like there is always going to be some stragglers in any of these lines. I saw with the Netflix line before that, which was a Walmart exclusive line, there was plenty of leftovers of Mirages, of the zombie Datsun mold. And even the Optimus Primal with the Rat Trap, that didn't sell very well. So I would not be surprised if they don't do a second run, if anything. Let's see, where are we at here? Next up, could we see G1-ified versions of the new Dinobots like Scorn? So they respond here saying for a G1 Scorn, we'd prefer to see that in the Studio Series somehow. Now, what they're referring to is because Scorn has been different kinds of versions throughout the years, both in comic book and in the movieverse and everything like that, and in toy form. And I think that when they say they want a Scorn, they want obviously the Age of Extinction Scorn, which, by the way, if you haven't picked up that figure, the old Age of Extinction one, fantastic figure, really cool. People just probably want to have a G1 version of it. But I think they're like, well, if we're going to do Scorn, we're probably going to do Age of Extinction Scorn. That's pretty much what they're saying, which makes sense. I mean, that would be the first one to do. If you want to do something afterwards and you have the trademark lingering around, sure, then you could do something else. Then they ask here, what's the next HasLab? And they said the next HasLab is being worked on, but we can't give any details or dates. And that's fair. We didn't learn about Victory Saber until months after Unicron was showing up on our doorsteps. I mean, if I remember correctly, Unicron was showing up in April, and we didn't start learning about HasLab Victory Saber until I want to say September. So let's put it this way, not until we have Victory Saber in our hands could we even expect to know anything about the next one. So that's a whole different kind of conversation. Then they ask here, how about Shattered Glass HasLabs, like Unicron or Victory Saber? So obviously a Shattered Glass Unicron or a Shattered Glass Victory Saber. And then they said if they wanted more in that direction, then we'd probably first test the waters with Shattered Glass Titan classes within the Shattered Glass line, such like Omega Supreme. So I don't know if that's a suggestion that we're going to be getting an Omega Supreme Shattered Glass or Omega Sentinel colored one. But if they do something like that, it'll be done through the Shattered Glass kind of banner. And then if there is success, then they might consider that in the future. But I think that's, honestly, I'll be honest with you, I think that's not the case. A new Cybertron, Optimus Prime, and wingsaber, perhaps? They think it's something that's doable to have a wingsaber made that could be an attachment to the already existing Siege Cybertron Optimus Prime, a.k.a. Galaxy Force Optimus Prime, a.k.a. Cybertron Optimus Prime. So what they're saying is if they would do something like that, they'd probably just do a brand new wingsaber figure that then would throw back somehow and work with that previous mold. And knowing Hasbro, if they do something like that, like they make a brand new wingsaber, a.k.a. Galaxy Force Sonic Bomber, They'll probably then do also a reissue of the Siege Cybertron Optimus Prime in the modern times. It might be like a leader class wave filler, which they've done before. So when, like, let's say hypothetical, this isn't fact, but hypothetical, the next trilogy of Legacy, the next series of it, one of the leader classes will be a filler, and it'll be the leader class Siege Optimus Prime, maybe with some deco changes just to make it a little different from the first one, because you know how Siege was with its battle damage and stuff. And then the wingsaber will be a part of that assortment too, just to give people the opportunity. Because to put out a figure that has a toyetic kind of combine element on a product that at that point would probably be 4 to 5 years old would be silly. So it would work. It would work. I could see them doing that. Then they're saying here, more Cybertron, aka Galaxy Force related Titan classes. Then they said anything is possible, but daunting since there's a lot of Titans. That says here they even joked about why don't we make all the next Titans for the next 5 years Cybertron Galaxy Force related, aka Starscream, Quick Mix, Menasor, and Primus. You know what? I'd hate to say it, but I'd be down for that just because it would be kind of cool to see how they do it. I mean, especially, like more simpler designs like the Starscream. What would they do to make that, worth the bang for your buck? Be very interesting. Then they say here, as to move further into the Unicron trilogy characters, could we see Power Links, the Power Link ability for Armada Energon incorporated into new Legacy figures? And then Evan wants that. It says here, Evan wants that to happen. So it sounds like Evan wants to include more Armada and Energon characters and include their gimmick involved with it, which would be very interesting to see. Much like how, look, gimmicks weren't something that was taken away completely when we had Titans Return and when we had Power of the Primes, combiner elements with Combiner Wars. So if something like Armada and Energon is included in our Generations flavored kind of line, why would you gut the gimmick out of it when it was a big part of those characters? So pretty cool. What TF figure would you personally like to see made the most? And the answer, and this came from Evan, was Studio Series 86 Optimus Prime, which in my opinion would probably just be a repack, repaint of our Earthrise leader class Optimus Prime. Just my opinion. That's how I think they could do it. And it would be more affordable. Maybe include some extra accessories, maybe include, swappable pieces or something. But possibility of doing the original 13 Primes as figures anytime soon. Mark and Evan talked about doing them all the time. Actually, if it happened, the Fallen would be a tank as expected. And I would expect that too, because the very first Fallen figure we got, which was the Titaniums all those years ago based off of the Dreamwave design, did turn into a tank. So, and I would be down for that. I'd be down any of the original 13. We need representation of those characters. Could Takara... Okay, here we go. So here's another Armada update. So could the Takara Armada Optimus Prime happen as a HasLab? Now, here's something interesting to say. Because it's an Optimus, hypothetically, it could never be a HasLab. Now, I'm going to read that again. Because it's an Optimus, hypothetically, it would never be a HasLab. So HasLab products could not be Optimus Primes. That's very interesting. Is that a rule internally? Is that something that they go with where, like, top tier, like I always say, legendary 7 characters should not be HasLab because they feel that they have enough weight that they could be sold on a retail platform? That's very interesting, because then that makes us ask, something like God Jinrai, which is an Optimus Prime mold and Optimus Prime looking character. If we want to do like a God Bomber, God Jinrai, Super Jinrai, Power Master Optimus Prime, that'll probably be a retail thing. Where something like, let's say, Diatlas or some of the other characters, that might not be the case. So very interesting. That's again, something to really chew on with that one there. Did the delays of Rise of the Beast cause any figures originally planned for 2023 to be shifted later? They said none that they could think of. And what they're pretty much saying is, with Rise of the Beast now be shifting from 2022 to 2023, did anything that was planned for 2023 get shifted over? They said none that they could think of. And I could believe that, because that's movie stuff. That's movie related. That was intended for the movie stuff. So I don't think they planned that far ahead with movie stuff after the movie stuff they already have. Where if it was something that they were talking about Legacy, I could see stuff getting shifted over. Are they looking into any other ways to get that Takara Optimus to be released in any way? They said here, if he would be released, he would be mainline. That's for sure if they did him. Then they followed up. The question is, would it be the same one that we saw or an all-new sculpt? It would possibly be based off of the previous one that you guys already saw. They could do a new one, but it depends how the things look at the time. So if he would be released, he would be a mainline product, and there's a stronger chance that it would be that mold, but things can change if time passes. What weapon pack accessory would you like to see added into a weapon pack? They said Cheetor's gut gun, and I agree with that, because Cheetor does need his gut gun for his Kingdom figure. Which technically, in a lot of ways, they already kind of have the sculpt, so it's just a matter of time. How long will Legacy run for? And they say Legacy will run for 3 years. As far as we know, the current plans is for it to be a trilogy. Interesting. It's going to be a trilogy. Keep that in mind. Chew on that for a bit. Can we expect to keep seeing non-G1 stuff after this? And they said yes. You said that we'll be seeing animated. We're back in the animated discussion now. You said we'll be seeing more of animated in Legacy. So what is the animated characters you'd like to see done the most? And they responded Ratchet, Optimus Prime, and Lockdown. And they said Ratchet needs to be done the most. He needs to be done better. I don't know. I never really hated the old animated Ratchet figure, so I'm very curious to see what they mean by that if they do it. So sounds like Ratchet might be the first when you think about it. And probably because maybe they need to do another Ratchet trademark. Who knows? Most wanted Beast Machines figure you'd like to see. And then they said just Viacons in general. Me personally, I'd like to see Obsidian get his fair share done. Next up we have here is, if G1 Megatron could be done in Studio Series 86, how would it be handled? Obviously, he couldn't turn into a gun, so I guess a tank. And pretty much how they respond is, more than likely, a tank, yes. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, if you can't do the gun, don't do it at all. Because I feel that we pretty much reached the apex of what could be done with a Megatron to still look like the animation model of the original cartoon, with what we saw in Siege and Earthrise with that Voyager class. Whatever we would get with Studio Series would just be forcing it at this point. So I think that there's a lot of other characters that I'd rather see done than them trying to just make yet again another tank Megatron. That's going to be yet again painted into G2 colors and everything. And maybe hero purple colors, but that's a whole other story. Next up we have here, for Earthspark, could we see Voyager class or Leader class in addition to the Deluxe class we were shown? Or could we see Earthspark characters for Generations? They said it's possible for Earthspark characters in Generations, but we're sticking to the Deluxe class right now, maybe later down the line. My personal opinion on that, the way that I'm seeing how they're handling Earthspark from a toy line standpoint is very similar to how they handled Cyberverse. And if they need to do something that's the larger price points, that's where they have, again, that Spin Changer Ultra class, the Ultimate classes they had, which was another one. Unless the line does gangbusters and sells extremely well, I don't see them going into Voyager and Leader class, unfortunately. And not to mention, there'd have to be characters that justify those price points. I mean, if they're doing, Megatron as a deluxe, and Megatron makes sense as a deluxe, unless they have bigger characters that justify that, where would that fit in? But again, that's just my personal take. But it really would have to, if the line has to sell well first before I think they'd even make that pivot. And I'm pretty sure everything's planned for the next year and a half anyways. Next up, for Legacy animated stuff, again, back to animated. Would they be in original style or more a G1-ified style similar to how the Transformer Prime toys were done? Referring to, if we did get animated, would they look like the animated toys that we got back in the day? Or would they be like how all the Transformer Prime toys have been done already in Legacy? And they said, unfortunately, the latter. However, We have heard about the feedback from the stylization of the Transformer Prime figures, so we are working on trying to find a way that is a better balance between the G1ified look. So it sounds like they heard how some people are not a fan of how some of the Transformer Prime characters look in Legacy, and how they're trying to find a balance for that. But I mean, that pretty much means, unfortunately, if we did get animated characters, and it sounds like we are, it's not going to be what we expect. It's not going to be that Derek Wyatt aesthetic and that kind of look. So even if you do get a Ratchet, yeah, they say they want to do it better, but it's probably not going to fit in aesthetically with your animated collection, which is a shame. It really, really is. Next up, could we see more accurate versions of them and Transformer Prime characters through Studio Series? And they said, it's entirely possible. We've been talking about expanding to Studio Series beyond the movies. And that's been an ongoing conversation for a while, of expanding Studio Series beyond just the movie characters, including video game stuff, including other things. So, I mean, if they want to have a line that's super accuracy, then maybe animated will have to be in Studio Series. As crazy as that sounds. Yeah, I'm going to get my super show accurate, Studio Series animated jazz through there or something. Who knows? Or at least, something like Sentinel Prime that definitely needs it, and a few others, and a proper price point. Then we have here, what led to them expanding to more non-G1 characters after a heavy G1 focus with the Prime Wars trilogy and the first 2 chapters of War for Cybertron? It says here, the designers wanted to bring in new characters and characters that needed desperate updates. People are getting tired of the same ones. I 100% agree. I think you could only buy the same G1 characters over and over and over and over. I understand there is a incentive to sell, and those ones always do sell well, because there's always a rollover of audience that weren't around when these characters got their classics interpretations, and they weren't around when they got their War for Cybertron trilogy interpretations or something. But that being said, for the longtime collectors, we want to get some freshness too. So I'm pretty sure that that's how they are able to fit in some of the new characters on top of the same ones we see every time. Will Legacy get any kind of story like War for Cybertron did, a show, a comic, etc.? And they said not to their knowledge. And then they said, well, then how about depicting the story through box art or back of box story, like a connecting story across packaging? And they said, well, that could be possible. Doesn't sound like it's going to happen. It sounds like Legacy is really just kind of like what Classics was and Universe at the beginning, just trying to put out product with no story really attached to it. Will Generation Selects be continuing? And they said, Generation Selects is not going anywhere. Any rumors you've been hearing about that are false. I didn't even know there were rumors of Generation Selects ending. Interesting. More obscure characters that you would like to bring in. And they mentioned Velocity, Javelin, the Camions, and of course, this one's really interesting, Mistress of Flame. I'd love to see a Mistress of Flame figure. I think she could be done really well. And the last question that they have here is for Hasbro, and then we'll get to Kotobukiya quickly because they have a few questions there. Is there a possibility of a HasLab Lite being introduced, like recolors or retools of more obscure characters fans could hopefully see to stand in their mainline scale of their core, deluxe, Voyager, and leaders? As if could we get smaller scale stuff as opposed to big grand items like Unicron and Victory Saber? And then they said, well, that's kind of what Generation Selects and Pulse exclusives exist for. It's also why they have the fan vote. So yeah, and in all honesty, I totally agree with them there. I mean, if we're going to get obscure characters and stuff like that, that's what Gen Selects is for. I mean, we got G2 Sandstorm, like really? Like we got G2 Sandstorm. Granted, he's just a repaint, but he's still a super obscure, nobody really knows who he is except for weird guys like me kind of thing. And yet he got a release in Generation Selects. So if stuff like that could exist, then Gen Selects is the platform for that. And I mean, bring it on. And if they feel that there's, specific characters that fans are hoping for, that's where a fan vote could come in, and then the fans could vote for those obscure characters. So, sounds good to me. And then we move over to Kotobukiya. Those are the guys that are behind the sexy Optimus and sexy Megatron statue and the soon-to-be-coming Bumblebee one of their Kotobukiya line of figures, the Bushojo line, as it's called. So, we have just a couple questions from then, and then we're going to call it a day, and you guys could point to your comments below and what you want to talk about. First question is, was putting your items on Hasbro Pulse ever a possibility? Because right now the only way you could order the Kotobukiya Bishojo Transformer stuff is through the importing websites and, of course, your online retailers that aren't Hasbro related. The answer is, actually, we did want to do that, but there's some timing and legal issues involved, so we were not able to do it ultimately in the end. Kotobukiya, unfortunately, works with a lot of other brands that aren't Hasbro related. So, and the Bishojo line has characters in that line that are Hasbro related, and then a lot that aren't, some are licensed with Mattel, some are licensed with other companies. So they don't want to have something that also has other companies attached. I could see what they mean by that if you look at the Bishojo line and what is in there of characters. So makes sense. Will Recolor versions be happening? They're already in the planning phases. Hopefully we could get them out. Of course, there's going to be a Nemesis, convoy, aka Black Convoy, aka Nemesis Optimus Prime, aka Scourge, aka whatever you want to call it. Maybe maybe an Ultra Magnus colored one. The Megatron, they could do black repaint. They could do Megaplex. They could do gold Megatron. So I'm pretty sure they're planning. Look, if you look at how they handled the My Little Pony one and the G.I. Joe Bishojo stuff, there was tons of repaints of the Hasbro side of things with the Bishojo line. So I'm pretty sure they'll do it with Transformers, which is naturally born for repaints. How about Shattered Glass colors as a redeco in the line? Both Hasbro and Kotobukiya are supportive of this idea. Again, would not be surprised. Optimus, purple colors, evil, brand new head sculpt, sure. With these recolors, will they make extra accessories or including or additional figure tweaks? Would be likely to say yes, and that would not surprise me. If you do a Shattered Glass Optimus Prime, you're not going to put that happy-go-lucky face of the convoy that they have right now on the Bishojo. They'll probably put something evil looking. Then they asked here, will you guys be doing any Fembot characters? And they said, can't answer that right now. And then they a few more questions here. Will the line expand outside of G1 characters in general? That's something that they are considering right now, but G1 characters right now are the ones they're be releasing, so that is the focus there. Again, it's a license thing. Whenever Hasbro licenses out Transformers, they right away put the Legendary 7 in the face of the licenser and go, hey, we know you're paying us big money for the license. Here's a suggestion of how to make money, and it's always those Legendary 7. And again, reminder for people who don't know what the Legendary 7 are: Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Megatron, Starscream, Soundwave, Grimlock, and Devastator. Those are the 7 most well-known Transformer characters, not to hardcore fans, just even the general audience. So they always ride those out. Where are we at? Then we have here, how have the response or sales been thus far? I don't think the Convoy Optimus Prime has closed in terms yet of pre-orders, so we don't have the actual official order vendor numbers. But August so far, it seems like how many sales have been gotten in terms of promotions have been going very well. Long story short, it's doing very well with the Optimus sales, but they haven't closed the pre-orders yet, so they don't have the final numbers. What led to the creation of this line? The person in charge of the Transformer Bishojos, she loves Transformers. It's a she, by the way, who's behind the whole Bishojo line. Just keep that in mind. She was like, I want to make Transformer Bishojos, and it came from her. So we reached out to Hasbro, and then the process started. And not to mention, again, long before we had Transformers Bishojos, we had My Little Pony and G.I. Joe ones, and the My Little Pony ones were selling gangbusters. There's like 15 different releases thus far and convention exclusives and stuff. So I'm pretty sure Hasbro already saw the success with the Pony and the G.I. Joe one, that Transformers would have been a shoo-in. And that's more or less it, guys. I know this ran a little long, this segment, but there's a lot to take in and a lot of questions. But long story short, sounds like Animated is on the plate. Sounds like Armada is on the plate. It sounds like if you want more show-accurate versions that aren't G1-ified in the Legacy line, they'll probably end up in Studio Series. There's a lot to take away here. Let me know what you think, guys. Are you excited about this? But at the end of the day, this was San Diego Comic-Con, and I'm glad you were with me.